This is an interesting article. I think if we go back prior to the presidential election last year, we may remember this woman, Sidney Powell, the lady who sounded like she was crying while saying that Trump won the election by a landslide, and she's going to prove it. And Hugo Chavez developed a machine in Venezuela, and he's been dead a long time, that would shift votes from Trump to Biden. Let me tell you something. Hugo Chavez, like similar to Putin in Russia, all that guy in Belarus, the one who's has his cups torturing people and so forth, the president of Belarus, Belarus, they don't need a machine, you know. All they need are henchmen. That's it. Anybody believes Hugo Chavez needed a machine? First of all, in Venezuela, they use paper ballots anyway. They don't use a machine. They use paper ballots. Well, you just like in Russia, they do, and that's where all the forge comes in, the theft. They don't have any need for a sophisticated machine. So let me read this. Trump defender Sidney Powell justifies her election theft claims by conceding reasonable people don't believe them. I never believed them, and neither did the judges believe them. Where she filed her cases, I think Pennsylvania, probably Arizona, Wisconsin, and so forth. Michigan, I believe, too. Dominion Voting System seeks 1.3 billion in suit against a conservative lawyer for defamation. See what wakes people up? Once you sue them for a lot of money, then all of a sudden, they get an epiphany and they realize that what they're saying is BS and lies. I wonder if this article will play what she says. Reasonable people will not accept such statements as fact, but view them only as claims that await testing by the court through the adversarial process. Well, you have to present an argument. You just can't go in the court like that. As a matter of fact, you pull us down in court, you can be disbarred. You know, you can have your law license. That's the same like a doctor committing malpractice or a nurse doing malpractice, and you end up losing your license. You really want to sell apples and oranges on the side of the street as you get older? So said attorneys for Republican lawyer Sidney Powell as they sought dismissal of a $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit against Powell by the election equipment company Dominion Voting System. Dominion Voting System says Powell was a central part of the misinformation campaign surrounding the 2020 presidential election, as she reportedly called the election result into question in statements and TV appearances. Among other things, Powell claimed that the company's voting machines rigged the election for Joe Biden, which gained no traction in court. And by the way, even though she said no reasonable person would accept this as fact, many Trump people supporters do believe it. And that's the reason some of them ended up at the Capitol building on January 6th and trashed the Capitol and went into the Senate floor and offices and sit in the desk and defecate and all that stuff because they believe it. I never believe it. So, there has to be consequences, says Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, of her call for Trump lawyer Sidney Powell to be disbarred. over the bond election fraud claims. Powell participated in the big lie that fomented all of the ugly, scary, dangerous rhetoric in this nation. Let's see here. Maybe I can get this
Tonight,
played.
the governor of Michigan calling for pro-Trump lawyer Sidney Powell to be disbarred for leading the charge on a baseless lawsuit seeking to overturn the results of the presidential election. The governor wants to prevent Powell from practicing law in Michigan for comments like these.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States.
The entire election, frankly, in all the swing states should be overturned, and the legislatures should make sure that the electors are selected for Trump.
So that would include in the state of Michigan. She said it. Just overturn the election, have the legislatures by fiat appoint electors loyal to Trump. It's a stunning thing. Out front now, Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. So it's your state. Governor Powell tried to overturn the election there and others. You want her disbarred. Do you think you'll succeed?
I don't know if we're going to succeed, but I know it's the right thing to do. Our election was fair. It was safe. There was zero evidence that there was anything at issue with the tally of the votes in Michigan. Joe Biden won by almost 150,000 votes. And it was, I think, incredibly unethical for Donald Trump to send a team of lawyers in here to undermine our democracy, to violate their oaths, not uphold the high ethical standards that lawyers are held to. And there should be a consequence to that because it has fed this big lie that ultimately ended up in insurrection at our United States Capitol. And it's unacceptable, and there should be consequences for it.
So Governor Axios is reporting on a December meeting in the Oval Office. It's a pretty stunning report. Anyone who hasn't read it, I hope you'll go read it. Jonathan Swan's great reporting there, where Powell and others fed former President Trump debunked conspiracies about election fraud. And it goes on, and they're all screaming at each other. And part of what they say is that at its essence, the Powell crew's argument to the president was this: we have the real information. These people, your White House staff, don't believe in the truth. They're liars and quitters. Put us in charge. On some level, this argument was music to Trump's ears. He was desperate. And in this meeting, Governor, they say Sidney Powell recommends that the government, FBI agents, go and get all the Dominion voting machines. Just take them. And I mean, it was pretty stunning. I mean, it was essentially martial law by some sort of fiat. This is the Sidney Powell we're talking about.
Right, and that's why there has to be consequences. We cannot say, oh, well, let's just move on and turn a blind eye to this. Sidney Powell and the lawyers that Trump sent all across the country to participate in the big lie that has fed all of the and fomented all of the ugly, scary, dangerous rhetoric in this nation, it has a consequence. And frankly, as a lawyer myself, as our Secretary of State is a lawyer, our Attorney General is a lawyer, all three of us have joined in filing this because we know that we are supposed to be upheld to these incredibly high ethical standards. And not only was it breached in this instance, but it put our democracy in danger.
Okay, so there you go. Let's see here. Up this. Let's see. Powell's court motion also says all the allegedly defamatory statements attributed to defendants were made as part of the normal process of litigating issues of momentous significance and immense public interest. Wow, sounds fancy, right? Powell was described as a member of Donald Trump's legal team on multiple occasions around the election, even appearing at several news conferences with Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, But the Trump campaign ultimately sought to distance itself from her, saying Sidney Powell is practicing law on her own and is not a member of the Trump legal team. She is also not a lawyer for the president in his personal capacity. Dominion Veterans Systems $1.3 billion lawsuit. Wow, that's something that will wake anybody up. Not 1.3 million, but 1.3 billion. That's like, wow, that's like 1,300 million. Lawsuit was filed shortly after the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6. The company said Powell's claims helped lay the groundwork for the deadly attack. The company has also sued Giuliani and MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, an outspoken Trump defender, over their claims regarding the company's practices. So I guess that's the end of the article right there. And somebody made a comment, Andrew Weekly, Powell's court motion also says all the allegedly defamatory statements attributed to defendants were made as part of the normal process of litigating issues of momentous significance and immense public interest. That sounds like such fancy words. There was nothing normal about this process in a functioning democracy, this writer says. Dennis S. Claims were investigated by Department of Justice under AG Barr and found to be not true. Barr specifically mentioned that Dominion Machines was not changing votes. Georgia had tabulated the paper ballots to the voting machines 3 times. All the votes were certified. Powell and Trump still continue to make the claims even after Barr completed the investigation. Thus the defamation lawsuit. Bob Weed says reasonable people would not accept such statements as fact. He's quoting, the GOP is no longer populated by reasonable people. Well, I agree. No longer populated. There are more comments, but I'm not going to read them. This article is from Market Watch. MarketWatch.com, and the story is Sidney Powell, attorney, says reasonable people wouldn't believe her election claims. Isn't that something interesting? You make all kinds of outrageous claims. Then now when you're being sued and say, okay, put up or shut up then. You make all these claims, you say all these things that are not true, that's destroying somebody's business. Now they force you into court because, in a civil lawsuit, you got to show up in court. Otherwise, there'll be a judgment made against you. So, if you have to show up in court and then see if you can create something stupid and see maybe you can find a stupid judge that would agree with you. And I doubt that's going to happen. More than likely, she'd probably be disbarred and have her law license taken away from her.